Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening. Well, good afternoon.
Hello, everyone.
Good evening, afternoon, evening, late afternoon.
We'll just wait a couple more minutes here before we get started. Just make sure we get everybody we're going to get. A lot of people still logging in.
Um,
I think in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started here. Call this meeting to order. Welcome to another fabulous Finance and Operations Committee meeting. We'll jump right into the agenda. Hope everybody had a good holiday and all that, and time with family if you like family, and hope you got through it if you don't, and everything worked out great for you. First thing on the agenda is the information only items. Are there any comments or questions related to these 6 information only items? Hearing, seeing none. I had none either, so we will move into the abstracts. The first
I have
one.
one comment.
Oh, please, Dr. Yarbrough.
Sorry, yep, I'm a little slow this morning. So the agreement with 3 Prime Web Solutions, I just wanted to say that I appreciated the specificity and the metrics outlined for what that service is. So thank you very much for just writing that and providing it.
All right, thank you for that comment. Let's see here. So next is the one abstract, which is the school improvement grant for Hill House. Dr. Billy,
I'm not sure if he's on yet, but I can take that, Mr. Wilcox. This year, this abstract covers this year's SIG funding. This is a recurring, they're in the last year of the SIG grant. This is a continuation of the school improvement grant. This year, Hill House is receiving a total of $249,478 for SIG.
all right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? I had none either, so thank you for that. We'll move on to the agreements. The first one, agreement 4.1, is with Winston Strategic LLC. Mr. Middleton.
Good evening. This agreement with Winston Strategic is for media buying services. Again, we're ramping up on that time for school choice. We do want to make sure that all families in and outside of the district are able to know that this process is coming. So we are again seeking to use the funds to contract with Winston Strategic
Okay,
for
please don't pull anything else, okay?
media buying.
Dr. Yarbrough.
That's it. I know there were two questions. I think I received an email. I don't know if
Yes, thank you. Juggling my children here. But yes, thank you. My questions are if there's last year data that you have to show effectiveness. And the second question was, I think it was written that there will be a survey to mandate this year's experience. So my question was, how is that company thinking to mandate the survey? And if there are other means that can be used to track what is working.
Sure. So first, we do have the statistics and analytics from last year to know how many impressions, particularly for digital media on various websites, were impressions were received. So we had a lot of reach. Not necessarily did that translate into additional applications from outside the district, as we may have hoped, but we do have the total impressions and the viewership data that we could share with you. Regarding the survey, we want to be able to look at our return on the investment. So that is internal. So with the application this year, before parents are allowed to submit, it will ask them just a few questions on how they learned about the lottery or what things were impressionable to them. So we can say, I saw a billboard, I saw the commercial, so that we can next year say, hey, this, people are seeing us this way, or they are not seeing us in this manner.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I think the survey is a good idea. It can give some information. I'm also interested if the company specifically has a way of tracking their own progress that doesn't involve us being able to have a return on the number of surveys that people complete. And yeah, maybe one way to craft a question is to say in the last 6 months or in the last 4 months, what advertisements have you seen? Because if a number of the parents are repeat enrollments for their children, then the information they provide may not be current as of this most recent advertising cycle. And I think my general thought behind inquiry is just to make sure we're investing the resources in areas that bring a strong return as it relates to enrollment. And I'm not exactly sure how that's done when it comes to a billboard or some of the digital ways of advertising or advertising on the back of a bus or at a bus station. But I can see how it can be done as it relates to social media and tracking that way. But I'm new to the print forms or other forms of getting that information about return. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think that our path forward as in the agreement memo is probably the best way to do it. If we ask the company to sort of tell us what the return on the investment is, we would have to supply them with our actual data of who applied and placement. I don't think there is that ability to do that. So I think this is the best means forward for us to at least have a baseline of where are people learning about our school choice process. I think our emphasis and purpose is really to get the word out broadly for families. And just as a caveat, this is a large grant program that brings in about $34 million a year. And the state is actually looking for us and requiring us to do recruitment and outreach every year. So I know it seems like a lot, and we are very cautious of the spending with a very minimal budget in our office. But we are required under Connecticut statute with the magnet program to use a portion of the funds for recruitment of additional students and to promote our program. So this is really a drop in the bucket of what the district is taking in total income-wise, revenue-wise.
Yes, thank you. I support kind of contracting with this company And I think it should be on the contractor to determine how they're going to justify their metrics and means. I know it's a different approach with social media, but the information only items has, one agreement for marketing that is very specific and talks about how they're going to track whether or not people are receiving the advertisements and what follows up with that. So I think our contractor, as it relates to this marketing, should be able to provide us now or in the future how they can ensure that they're actually doing a good job as it relates to meeting some of our district targets and metrics. And I hear what you're saying in terms of the amount of this investment as compares to what's coming in, and also how we internally want to track what we're able to get as it relates to a return. So thank you.
Absolutely. And last thing from me, I just want to clarify that this is for media buying services and not necessarily for marketing. So they're not developing creative. We are really using them to secure the lowest cost possible that could be available to us to place. If we were to call iHeartRadio, WTNH Media, NBC to say we have this commercial already packaged and we like to air it, I don't even want to imagine what that cost would be. So the media buyer is using their relations and expertise to get us a package of lower rates on radio, TV, and billboard. As if we went to all the agencies that we in years prior may have gone to, we would not be able to afford that. This is really my total budget for marketing, this 60.
Okay, point one, well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think you answered my questions, Mr. Middleton, about the required nature of outreach that's required by the state for this. My run recommendation would be with the surveying you're going to be doing as people are going through the application process is to have a question that specifically delves into social media platforms. Just because, I mean, this one specifically is mentioning, I think, Facebook and Instagram, but also seeing other types of media platforms that people might be using, which might have a higher yield moving forward, depending on the audience. I'm an, grizzled old guy, so I'm hopelessly out of touch on a lot of this, but I'm just would highly recommend having a question specifically dealing with that to make sure that we're getting what people might be using, but people are using more and more of based on the data. So
for sure, we can definitely do that. And they are providing more of a digital media strategy. So not just Facebook and Instagram, but if we're looking for working mothers with children in a certain age group, if they're going to a certain site, a cooking site or what have you, they are targeting our ads there. So when you go to that, the banner may be for New Haven Magnet Schools programs. But we can definitely for sure include that in the survey and target that question. That's a great idea.
all right, thank you. Hearing nothing else on this one, we will move on to the 4.2, which is an agreement with Connecticut State Community College Gateway. Ms. Strand?
I don't see it here, but this is for our students at HSC to take the sociology course over at Gateway, taking on some more opportunities to gain credits before going to college, and again, working with the overall theme of the school.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions?
Yes, thank you. I just had one question, just trying to understand why this particular sociology topic, and yes, so why it's chosen, and also giving the target description that this program is for. Is there someone who can speak to that or talk about what the thinking is around this pairing, please?
I would have to get a more detailed answer, but in general, one of the things that usually HSC does probes for interest in particular courses, and looking at social causes they want to get involved in, understand things better, so that hence where the social problems, look at some of the things that occur or feel that happen in their community.
Okay, thank you. Do we
Doc,
know? Yeah, go ahead.
I would just like to add, so part of the retheming of HSC 5 years ago was leaning into the law and social justice theme there and thinking through opportunities for students to really explore that. So the sociology course was created when we were doing over their entire program of study. And the issue there is to bring forth some of the social issues that impact people's ability to access social justice. Civics, the civil rights thing. So it really goes along with their capstone project there and some of the work that they do with the students. So it's a higher level course for students, but it is offered to any student who is interested there. So they do not screen for that at HSC or require anything for that. But it's been part of the program of study now for the past few years when we redesigned the school.
Thank you for the information. Do you know whether this particular course has happened before, or is this the first year for this topic?
It's always a sociology course. I cannot confirm that this particular course was there, but this partnership with a sociology course through Gateway has been happening for quite some time there. So I don't know if they changed the lens. It's a Sociology 100 course. So I imagine that even if the course description changed slightly, the content of the course was probably very similar. Because what we do try to focus on with the concurrent enrollment opportunities is the prerequisites that any student would need, regardless of what they choose to study. We want to make sure that all of the stuff that we're doing with concurrent enrollment will translate to any college, no matter what the degree is that a child ends up pursuing post graduation.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
I
welcome.
think my interest is whether students leave after this course and they're encouraged, or whether they're discouraged, like whether they're empowered or whether they're kind of depressed and discouraged by what is spoken about. So I'm a little bit cautious around the topic. And so that was one of my questions around, have we had it before? What are the outcomes of how the students have thought and felt about the topic? So I think it's something to look into because the way it's written out on the paper is just, it's like, here's why you're in this situation is how it came across to me. And I don't know if that would be enlightening or if that would be discouraging.
For our students at HSC, it tends to be these courses usually are launching pads for different activities that they engage in. Again, going back to the theme and really focusing on social justice. So it gives them a perspective, and the teachers generally do a really good job of helping them to put it in context and also of what's possible from coming from this basis.
Thank you. Thank you. I receive all your points. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any questions I had have been answered. Ms. DeMeo, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just want to make a correction on the account number. The last digits should be 56694, not 95. So we'll reflect that for the board's agenda.
Okay. Thank you. All right, hearing nothing else on this, we'll move on to 4.3, which is an agreement with Insight Coaching. Ms. Bonanno?
Yes, so this is an agreement with Insight Coaching to help support very intensive work for the reconfiguration of Betsy Ross. So as you know, we were recipients of the $15 million MSAP award. Part of that is that Betsy Ross is going to become a 7 through 12 high school over the next 5 years. And next year, we'll be introducing grade 9. So we are working this entire year with the current staff at Betsy Ross and with the support of Insight Coaching and Holly Maxon, the supervisor of arts in the district, to design the program of study for grade 9, tracking back what will happen in grade 7, and then dreaming forward for where we want to be in grade 12. So Insight Coaching is Ariel Spratzer. She's worked in the district. She actually worked very closely and continues to work with HSC when we did the reconfigured work there when they were recipients of MSAP in 2017. So she has a really in-depth knowledge about the core curriculum in New Haven. She did some work around CTE, so she does understand our direction with college and career pathways. But we're working with Ariel because it's a smaller company that has the ability to give very intensive support to the school as we are taking on a huge undertaking in designing a new high school space.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this? I had none either, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to 4.4, an agreement with Dr. Dorothy Stubb or Stubbe?
Stubbe, Dr. Stubbe.
Sorry,
Yep.
Ms. Jackson.
That's okay. Yep, this is an agreement with Dr. Stubbe to provide consultations for students who may require an evaluation from a psychiatrist as recommended through the PPT process.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either. Go on to 4.6, agreement with Smart Start Education. Ms. Joyner?
I was just checking to see if you skipped 4.5 on purpose.
Oh, I did not. Thank you. Thank you for catching that for me.
I can go first though, I'm fine.
Well, as long as you're already live mic here, go right ahead and we'll drop back for 4.5.
All right. I don't know if you recall from last year, we received the high dosage tutoring grant from the state, and Smart Start Education is the company that we contracted to work with. We just had to split it into 2 parts because the scope of the tutoring spanned 2 fiscal years. So it ended last year and started again in September of this year, which answers Dr. Yarborough's question. The reason that it's coming now is because I actually thought that it had been submitted back in August, and I was on vacation for the F&O meeting. And when it was shared with me, you have to be there, I thought that someone had, just like Ms. Denegri and Dr. White spoke for that person. I thought that this was something that had come through. It had just been explained and had gone through. So I wasn't thinking about it. It was on my radar that it was just done. And as we were going through some things over the last few weeks is when I discovered that it had not actually gone in. And that's why it's here today.
Right. Thank you. Comments or questions?
Thank you for the walkthrough of the timeline.
You're welcome.
Indeed. All right. Well, I had no further questions, so we'll drop back to the one I missed. Thank you, Ms. Joyner. Drop back to the one I missed, which was 4.5, an agreement with Perkin Eastman Architects. Mr. Carter?
Yeah. Good evening. First, I'd like to respond to Dr. Yarborough's questions. The memo has been revised. It doesn't fully state the purpose of the agreement. The facility assessment study has already been done. It was completed in March of 2023 by Cigar and Partners. It's over 500 pages of data with assessment on all the facilities, including the building themselves, HVAC, mechanical, electrical, and other systems, including air and energy systems in the school. What we have is all this data, but we want to consolidate it, and we set priorities in 3 areas. One is consolidation of schools, capital planning, and assessment of high school space needs. And this is a project I brought a timeline to the F&O meeting back in August, stating that we had to get this assessment done, prioritize our capital planning needs in those 3 areas, and move forward so we can go for state bond funding. So the assessment's been done. It's is having a firm to take all that data and prioritize it so that we can go out and seek state bond funding next year.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions?
Yes, great. Thank you very much.
And I'll submit the revised memo tomorrow.
Thank you for that. My one question that I had was the timeline for the work to be done. I know you presented previously on the timelines, but now that this is being awarded, is there a due date for this?
Well, the due date after the award is really 30 to 45 days. We're going to use to the end of the fiscal year in case anything else comes up, but it really should go no longer than June 30th, 2025.
Right. So understanding that, and that's how we typically are doing things to, for those types of contingencies, but to actually get useful information or a report back, it's
Well,
not waiting until June.
No, they know that when we
submitting.
had the solicitation, pre-solicitation meeting, we had 8 firms on the meeting. We told them what our expectations are. And of the 8 firms, 3 responded, very good responses. 1 was much better than the other. We had a panel with a representative from the city engineering department and 3 New Haven public school managers and administrators. So they're well aware of what they have to do.
Okay, so you're anticipating a February, March timeframe that they might be reporting back?
Hopefully February.
Okay. Thank you very much. So double check on my list here. Okay, I think I've got all the agreements, so we'll move into amendments. 5.1 is an amendment with an agreement with Eli Whitney. So Ms. Joseph Lumpkin or Mr. Tabaris?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Wilcox. So this amendment is to support Westler's grant after school program with Eli Whitney's after school initiative. They do have their curriculum is based off the NGSS standards, so they do correlate with the current school day science initiatives that are going on within the district. So they want to actually continue what is being implemented during the school day during after school time. So it's hands-on STEM-based programming that's being provided to these students at Westler Grant during their after-school program.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to a small amendment. Looks like for the agreement with New Haven YMCA Youth Center. Ms. Diaz Valencia.
Hi, good evening, everyone. This amendment is needed due to a slight increase in both the COLA grant for the school readiness priority and also the private provider funding. So the state came down with a couple of minor changes to the dollar amounts, and as the fiduciary, it has to come through us, and so here we are.
All right. Comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll jump to 5.3, which looks like it's just a change in account number.
Yes. Just making sure it's the correct, just adding the correct account number for the SIG grant.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? And looks like 5.3 is the same thing. Changing an account number for the SIG grant.
Correct.
So any comments or questions? So we'll jump into 5.5, which is an amendment to the agreement with Iris. Ms. Haxey?
Yes, good evening. So this one, 5.5, 5.6, and 5.7 are all similar in that when I came to you at the beginning of the year and we did these contracts for the translation services, we didn't have all of our grant monies and whatnots in place. And so I knew I was going to have to add to these. So these are the additions that should hopefully get us through the rest of the year. But I will say that Iris, this is our first year using them. which is quite exciting for our sort of in-person translation services. And they've been doing a terrific job and have been really willing to sort of take last minute things and everything. So they've been great. And we're pleased to be using a community partner in that way and supporting them as well.
All right, thank you. So are there any questions related to 5.5, 5.6, or 5.7? All right, and is it?
Yes.
Oh,
Sorry,
Dr. Yarbrough.
for 5.7, just a question around as for the documents, are there thoughts around using an automated translation process to do an initial translation of the documents? Because I just saw the price per word and other things. But yes.
Well, these documents are for special education primarily. And so as of right now, we should have some savings this year in that area because the PPT form itself now does have some translation ability in it. But when the thing we're translating the most now, Dr. Yarbrough, is the evaluations that they do, and they're very specific and very medical and lots of terminology. And I would just have a concern sort of legally with using a Google Translate type of thing for that. We are looking at some other solutions in-house. For example, we're trying to find out if we could perhaps, and I'm not sure if Tiffany's on, but we've been talking about some things about, having, if we have bilingual folks talking the things through with the parents and different things like that. So we are thinking about different solutions, but I'm not sure I'm confident enough yet in the commercially available online AI type services. I'd like a human's eyes on it still.
Yes, thank you very much for your reply. And yes, I definitely agree with the human's eyes on it. And
Not sure how much longer.
Yes.
Right.
And I was curious if maybe something automated could happen as the first pass, and then someone edit it from there. But it may or may not make a difference if the individual would need to read through the whole document as it relates to kind of the reporting and the specificity that comes from the evaluation.
Right. It's a great question. I'm not sure how the companies would feel about that. They would probably charge us just as much anyway, because they're going to have to read through every word anyway. There are other things available for certain types of documents that are sort of pre-translated. If they're the kind of documents you send out all the time, that's one thing. But these long evaluations that get done are very specific to the child. And so that's the trickiest part. That's the thing that we're paying the most for right now.
Yes, I agree with you. I did have a wondering if the companies are using it themselves as a first pass. But I'm sure they would definitely keep the savings for themselves. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Right. Sure. I will tell you that I've actually gone in and tried to look at those Google translation fails to sort of talk with it, from a world language teacher perspective. And they've fixed quite a few of them at the low levels. But what we're seeing is that once you get to the higher levels of conversation and nuance and writing, that's when Google still is not reliable, because you need to understand culture, you need to understand humor and sarcasm, all kinds of things, or even just nuance. You know how it is when you talk to a parent, you might not say something the same way as just a straight translation of what you might have written on your notes, something like that. So those kinds of things I think are important still, luckily, to have a human involved.
Yes, thank you. Very, very important insights and expertise. Thank
you.
All right, thank you. I'll just add that this might be a good place for a case study, or just to try one, just to see. Ms.
You're
Bourne?
right. Yeah.
Jessica, I'm looking at the account number on 5.7, and it's not a full account number, the 190-590-56694.
Thank you. And actually, thank you for reminding me. I also saw an error on 5.6. It should be 2511 on 5.6. And then the second one, let me see what it should be.
The last account number says 190-590-56694.
And then just 0000, I
Yeah,
believe,
but the 590 is not
is
an
incorrect.
account. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
so
That
just
was
wondering.
Tiffany Jackson gave it to me, or one of her staff gave it to me.
Okay, so then the account number would be 190-490-00-56694.
So 49000
Instead,
190.
this says 190-590 and no other numbers. It should be 190-490-00-56694.
Okay. Is that then okay. And that's her only general funds. I just don't want to.
Yep, that
If she's not still here. Okay,
I looked
thank
up
you.
the account and it's correct, but I didn't know what the 5 meant and who was going to cover that for you. So if it's Tiffany, then we're all set. Yep.
Yes.
All right, hearing nothing else on these three, we'll move on to the purchase orders. First one is a purchase order under state contract with Utility Communications for work done at Obama School. So Chief Reddish or Mr. Carter?
Hi, good evening, everyone. That is the upgrade for cameras and our locks, the locking systems. So this is basically an upgrade on the system that was previously put in. So the purchase orders that you'll be looking at tonight all are basically under the same thing. It's all under Utility Communications for upgrades in our systems.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? And so my one comment with this one is, Obama School's a relatively new school, although it's been a couple of years since it came online. And so what are these upgrades doing in particular with Obama, since presumably there was some equipment in there, maybe not enough, but
Certain items that were put in by the builders were not up to standard at this point. They're starting to fail. So now they need to upgrade. Okay. Some of which are the cameras and some of which was the locking systems itself.
All right. And were those under, I mean, this might be a question for Mr. Carter or his team, are there still things under warranty or things like that you could try to get some, understanding that this is through a state reimbursement, so we're getting some of this money back, but can we get more of it?
Some of the stuff, it's not under warranty. It's once you take over the building, you have so many months to make claim on anything. Otherwise, it goes beyond. So the camera systems, the warranties don't last that long on the warranty system itself for the cameras.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of years at the most, 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
As soon as you take the keys, they hand the keys over, basically time starts ticking.
Okay. Thank you. And so 6.2, so as you were saying, all these 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, are these all the same, just at different schools?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's similar equipment going into the schools, upgrading them, replacing aging equipment, and these all have to tie into the systems that you all use to monitor things across all these dozens of buildings. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Bourne and then Ms. DeMeo.
Maybe Ms. DeMeo is going to speak to the same. We noticed, Ms. Hannon's noticed that the account number was the actual grant, the reimbursement grant number. We need to use the capital funds to support this project until the reimbursement's received. So I did email the correct account number. It's 3C242461-58101 for all 4 projects.
Okay, thank you for that. Makes sense that you can't hit the grant until you have to have it reimbursed. Got it. All right. Any other comments or questions related to 6.1, 2, 3, or 4? All right. Thank you, Chief Reddish. And we'll move on to, we have one contract, which is award a contract with Worldcast Live. Mr. Lean or Mr. Carter? I don't see Mr. Aline on.
I think he's on the call. Can you repeat the contract?
Yes, so it's contract 7.1 with Worldcast Live.
That's for AV services?
Yes, for on-call audiovisual services.
Okay, fortunately, when we put that contract in, we did facilities had a responsibility of AV maintenance, and that was a decision that was made to move it from IT to facilities. But now we have IT and facilities working together, and that's just a backup just in case. But I think going forward, we were able to rely more on our own IT and facilities. But we need this contract just in case something major has to be maintained, upgraded. But so far, things are working out at the board meetings at Martinez.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? Hearing none.
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Yarber.
Sorry, I'm so slow with this microphone. Thank you very much for talking about this contract. I thought I read in the contract that it also supports Board of Alder meetings. And is that true, or is this a typo? I'm just trying to see what the connection is. And my second question is whether for the external events that are paid customers, if we're able to see that we recoup the cost of our AV services provided them. And then, sorry, the third question that I remember from my list is around whether or not this can also be a training opportunity and a potential job for youth.
Thanks, Dr. Yarbrough. The last question, yes, I think it is a possible training opportunity where youth. I'll check with Chris Brown, who's the acting IT director, but I think it's an excellent opportunity. The Board of Alders, I think it's been a while since we had some remote meetings with them. I really don't think there will be much of anything. Mostly it's for the Board of Ed and F&O. Board of Alders is ancillary request, but if we have to do anything connecting 54 Meadows to the Board of Alders, we have that availability. And we hope that the systems can be maintained and upgraded without significant costs going forward.
Great. Thank you.
It also could be that occasionally the Board of Alders will use school spaces for public meetings.
Exactly.
Or for city
budget
functions.
meetings in particular.
So that might also be. So it's not.
We do have budget meetings at
for
schools,
them,
yes.
Right, but it's not just for things in city, non-Board of Ed spaces. For the Board of Alders, it would be Board of Alders connected to the schools, not.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's one other question. I might have read the description incorrectly. It looked like that I think maintenance and repair is covered in this contract. And I'm wondering if those costs are covered in this contract and if it's just labor or if it's equipment, parts also.
I'll check with Mr. Arlene and Mr. Brown, but it'll be all of the three. It depends upon the type of repair. Some is more labor intensive, some may require a part, but we won't know until the equipment is examined.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Hearing nothing else on that, that's the last of the action items. So I'll go ahead and make a motion. And that is, I move we send to the board with a recommendation to approve this one abstract, these 6 agreements, the 7 amendments, the 4 purchase orders, and the 1 contract along with the corrected account numbers as noted as we went.
I second the motion.
And seconded, is there any discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. Dr. Yarborough,
Yes.
President Rivera,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. So the motion passes. Those will move forward. We will move into reports and updates. The first one of which is an overview of the FY25 budget process. So the request here was to get an update as to how that process is going to go, particularly if there's going to be anything different over previous years.
Good evening, everyone. Well, it's that time of year again when we start the budget process and go through the motions of getting all the data and information together to go out to schools. So far, on the screen we're showing the draft. So back in November 20th, we worked on getting the staff rosters out to the appropriate staff. And then we worked on today getting the non-staff templates out for the principals and administrators for our meeting on December the 4th. We will be making a presentation at the superintendent's meeting, going through, like having a workshop where we would explain how to complete the budget and what needs to be on there. We would also give them the dates on when everything is to do a return. We're actually doing what's called an active workshop where we would actually give the schools their projected budgets and then explain to them in detail how to complete it, including we'll also be giving them the line items with the explanation, so they'll have a better feel on how to complete the budgets with putting the amounts in the appropriate line items. And that will be taking place on Wednesday, December the 4th. We then have scheduled meetings with their department heads and the principals on this December the 16th, 17th, and 18th. And we have a Google form where the assistant supers will sign up, pick the day, and then we will meet with each of their principals on that specific date. Our preliminary budgets will be due back to the office between the week after Christmas break, which would be January the 6th through the 10th. The earlier, the better. We'll then be having internal budget reviews with the principals and administrators as needed. Our first draft of the budget will be compiled sometime in January. We're looking at having a board workshop on January 22nd. I'm sorry, January 21st, and then the budget presentation, the first budget presentation, which would just be a draft. We're looking at having that ready for January, for the week of January. Oh, I'm sorry, February 3rd. This thing's so small, I can't read it. We're also planning on having budget webinars with the community. So we'll be having those and trying to get them done in February and maybe early March, but we're trying to stick to February. We'll have one which will be online and one will be in person. And I think there may be another one, but we're not sure. It's depending on how much time we have to get this work done and how we can get it all together. So February will be somebody put the screen up in front of my calendar. I apologize. We're looking for making a presentation to the Board of Education and hopefully at the end of February. And that's why we're putting to be determined. And then we're thinking about having a Board of Ed, a special meeting on the budget in March. And then after the special meeting, we're looking at reviewing and adjusting the budget again. Then we're coming back to the board once we've made had all of our meetings, our community input, and have had our board F&O input. And then we're looking at recommended presented to the board for approval. That's to be determined yet. We know that in March, the Board of Alders, we will be going to a meeting, but we're not sure when that is yet because they haven't set their dates together. So we're hoping to adopt our budget sometime in April. And then a line got cut off for May 25th. I think that's that may be just a typo, because I'm not sure I had anything else in there. Board of Education final budget. No, so it would be in April, and then if we have to do anything in May, we'll pick a date for May, but we don't think we need the May date thus far. So this is just our draft showing you what our plans are, what our thinking is, and what we've done to date. So far we've done the November 20th, we've done the December 2nd, December the 3rd, there'll be something going out if it has not already, and December the 4th, we'll be doing the training at the superintendent's meeting.
All right, thank you for that overview. Are there comments or questions? So I have a recommendation to put into the mix. I was thinking about this. I think there's a big disconnect between public perception of the school system's spending and the reality that is in place, particularly the reality that is dictated to us basically by our below state average per pupil funding level that the district has to work with, which puts our kids at a disadvantage over kids in other districts, even districts right next door, such as Hamden. So I was wondering if it would be possible, since we have Thought Exchange software platform for asking questions, if we could add into the schedule some public polling or ask some questions related to the budget to try to get at some of these perception issues, so that we can then, in the budget presentations that go before the board, the alders, and the public, that we might be able to address some of those questions in the presentation. So I'm wondering, I think we have Thought Exchange through the end of this fiscal year. And I'm wondering if that would be advisable. And I don't need an answer for it now, but I do think that we have a lot of perception issues where people think we're not doing anything right, when I think a lot of it is the district gets essentially a hamburger budget and is expected to make a steak dinner. And which, my apologies to vegetarians in the audience, but I think that there is kind of that disconnect, and I'm wondering about other disconnects that might be there that we could present some information on. Dr. Negron?
Mr. Wilcox, I think that I do like the idea. We know that exchange, right, has been an incredible tool for us when it comes to getting the thinking, right, of our constituents. So we can most certainly think about what thoughts we want to put out there. The other thing that I wanted to mention is we will take advantage to begin to do a little more of almost like preloading things that need to be understood related to the budget. So for example, at our next meeting, the topic for the superintendent's update that we are planning to bring forth will be a segment all related on special education funding, right? Just to begin to educate a little bit so that it can support with more understanding of how it is that, our costs and how things are funded. But all of that to say, I like the suggestion, I like the idea. So we'll definitely think through that to then see, when will be a good time to embed those thought exchanges throughout the process.
And thank you for that. I think also related to that, I mean, on the calendar was listed a potential for a board workshop and things like that. It's not something we've done before or typically, but also having a kind of a public look at things and trying to have I'm imagining a room with round tables and the giant post-it notes, which I kind of hate but are useful, and just trying to get people engaged with some of the challenges that those of us that have been those of you that work in the district and those of us, like some of us on the board that have been on the board for several years, I think being able to deal with some of these challenges and see how it's hard to make the funds stretch to meet the needs. And the reason for all this is I think this is our most important budget cycle that we've had in recent memory, simply because we have the state biennial budget, we have the city budget, we have the city biennial capital funds budget. We have a lot of needs here, and we also have changes in the presidential administration, which will bring different people in Department of Education who might have different ideas about the existence of the Department of Education, which provides so much special education funding, et cetera. I just think having something that is informing as many people as possible the issues as the district sees them, as well as getting as many ideas as possible from the community and other leaders in the city. So, Dr. Negron, your hands up. Still?
Yes, related to the board workshop and speaking with Linda, our idea is that we know we're going to be walking into a very, like you just said, right, very complex budget process this year, primarily because we know, right, the situation that we're currently in, and that things are not going to get better overnight. And I think I am asking for a time that Linda and I can get in front of the board, a workshop, to really be able to dig in as much as possible with some of the very complex decisions that ultimately, right, the board needs to give us guidance when we're putting this budget together. Because we know that despite all advocacy that we're going to continue to do, the reality is that the millions are not going to come floating our way. So before we finalize that budget, Linda and I want to be very honest and engage the board to really consider, this is what we got. These are possibilities, but we're going to need your guidance even before we begin going out to the public to engage the public in those guidance as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions on this topic? Hearing none. The next item is the Finance and Operations 2025 meeting calendar.
Mr. Wilcox, I think that was supposed to be the discussion calendar.
No, I think for this, it's what our meeting date's going to be for fiscal year 2025.
Okay, well, those date calendar is being developed for the whole board and its committees, and Finance and Operations will continue to meet on the first and third Mondays, with the exception of holidays when we meet on a Tuesday. So that's all not in a written format at this time.
Okay.
That I have.
All right. Well, that's fine. I mean, we have our schedule set through the end of January 2025 anyways. We just need to, do you know if the meeting calendar for 2025 is going to be presented at the board meeting next week?
That I don't know.
We end up with, the reason why I bring this up is we end up with an issue of having to have special meetings for regularly standing board meetings if the board doesn't approve its calendar, which is why we have things running through January 2020, January 31st, 2025. We always do we approve a 13-month calendar to try to avoid that issue. But we'll be in the situation where the first meetings of February 2025 are going to be special meetings where things can't be added to agendas if we don't approve it at our next meeting. Attorney Alexiadis?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I think, you're correct. FOIA requires that the list of meetings be posted, and it's got to be filed 30 days in advance of any January meeting. Otherwise, those meetings are special meetings. I would also note that the FOIA statute allows the chairman or the secretary to file this, it's actually not posting, but it's filing with the city town clerk. So I would recommend that you file the list with the city town clerk as soon as possible, because it's December 2nd. So that even though we're covered for January, there's this anomaly in the statute that that you should file it sooner rather than later. It can always be changed later, corrected after the fact, if necessary. I can confer offline with folks, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yeah, I think it'd be.
The meetings for January are posted now, so there shouldn't be a need for a special meeting. We just need to make sure that the rest of the year's posted in time. Is that correct?
That is why we came up with 13-month calendars for the past couple of years for all meetings. However, there is an anomaly in the statute that says you can't have a regular meeting in January until the list for the year is posted. It doesn't make any sense, but I just think you should cover yourselves by posting it sooner rather than later. But Pat, I can talk to you about that. Thank you.
I just recommend it because our first meeting in 2025 for the full board, where they could approve their calendar for all the meetings, is January 13, which would mean any meeting before February 13 would be a special meeting between February 1 and February 13. But we avoid that if we have a calendar we can vote on Monday.
Agreed.
Not the worst thing in the world if we don't, but it does create issues where we might need flexibility, because we can't always predict what we might need to add to an agenda based on the needs on the list.
One of my points was that, if I may, that while the board typically votes to approve the schedule, the statute doesn't require that. The statute authorizes the chairman or the secretary to file the schedule. Doesn't mean the board shouldn't vote on it, and if you vote on it Monday, next week, that takes care of the problem.
Yeah, I believe we have a board bylaw that says that the board needs to approve its calendar, but I'm
not unusual.
So
got it.
Just going to say, right, we already know when all these committees meet, right? Like Pat mentioned, I will just have Ray begin to work on this tomorrow. We will send it out to the different committee leads to verify that a mistake hasn't been made, so that one can be made available for you to vote on Monday.
Thank you. All right. Looking at the agenda. The next thing is Series 3000 policies. As I've mentioned before, I think transportation should be the next one that we look at. I have not pulled together the transportation policies, pulling from CABE to see if there's been any changes from the last time I did that. So I will do that and send it to the committee, and it could also be posted, but it's just the transportation policies in our Series 3000, just updating those, and then having a goal of maybe having those complete by the end of January or early February, depending on how complicated some of the changes are. As I recall, some of the changes are pretty minor, or no real changes at all, based based on things, but there might be some things that need an extra look since we have a kind of a complicated transportation system. Is there anything else on this item?
For transportation, are we, do we have a timeline that we're up against as it relates to the contract, signing the contract? Or are we okay? Meaning nothing's going to be null and void in 2025, is it?
No, I mean, the larger transportation contracts in place, and it's in place for several years. These are the board policies related to transportation. So pulling it up right now, some of the examples are
I thought the larger policy was not in place yet.
well, we have our transportation policy is in place and it goes back to 1999. So we have policies in place, they're just outdated and they need to be updated. And so the ones that are listed on our website now are around transportation equipment, special transportation for exceptional children, and reporting of school transportation complaints. So we have things in place, they're just outdated in terms of being 25 years old.
Thank you. And I misspoke. So I'm thinking about our policy, but I'm thinking about there's something in our policy as it relates to when our contract needs to be signed. Like, do we still need to sign our contract for transportation? And I'm wondering if there's a timeline for that signing that we are up against that may pose a problem for us.
Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have a multi-year contract in place, and I don't even recall if we approve annual updates or if those are already been approved.
Can someone confirm if that's signed?
Okay, that's a good, I mean, I would assume it's signed since we're in December, almost 6 months into the year. But I know it's it's complicated contract that might be not signed yet. So if we could get an update as to make sure that our current, and Dr. Yarborough, if I may, you're talking about the main transportation contract with First Student, the big one.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I thought we were still working on some legal descriptions in that contract, and it remained something we needed to nail down.
Okay, we could get an update, maybe in an email to the committee sometime soon, or if not, we can put it on, if it needs to be a topic at our next meeting, which will not be until first Monday in January. So we're not scheduled to have another meeting this month. Just remember that. So, all right. Hearing nothing else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is it seconded? I will second it. Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes.
Sorry.
President Rivera.
I wasn't quick on the unmute button. Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.